Okay, it all starts in San Francisco, where I was a journalist and a venture capitalist. And I used to love to go to a favorite restaurant. I love the tandoori chicken. I love the papadums. But I never recognized that this restaurant was the center of a human trafficking ring that had brought over 500 teenagers from the area of Bangalore, India, into the United States for the purpose of forced labor. Modern slavery in restaurants, then out to fruit and vegetable fields in California, brothels, and construction crews. It was such a shock to me, and the only way that it was uncovered was that there was a gas leak in one of the apartments where the trafficker kept the children. And when the police came, one young girl had died, others were critically injured. They said, "We have to get you out of here." They said, "Yes, rescue us from the gas." No, not from the gas, from him. And the whole thing began to unravel. And for me, this became an interest for figuring out how in the 21st century slavery could be in my backyard in San Francisco. So I decided to go around the world. I went to rug looms in Nepal, rice mills in India, in Latin America, sex trafficking rings. Around the world, I went to understand how trafficking works in the 21st century, using my journalistic skills that I had long ago learned through different magazines and newspapers I worked for. Now, my goal simply was to tell the story that there were 30 million people in the world living in slavery. There's a $32 billion industry annually. So how could this work, and where were the people that were behind it? My journey took me to many countries, among them Thailand, and I met this woman. Her name is Krunam. Krunam is an artist. She's a painter. She was not looking for human trafficking any more than I was, but as she would walk to her studio in Chiang Mai, Thailand, she noticed these small children down by the riverfront. So one day she took her empty canvas, tins of paint and brushes, and asked them to paint their stories. And these terrible stories, nightmares, appear on the canvas. She said, "Where do you get these stories? You're only 10 or 11. They said, "You know what? We're not from here. We're from China and Vietnam and Laos." And they tell the story of how they were trafficked to Thailand to work in these karaoke bars so that men from around the world could come and do things to them that they would be arrested for doing in their own home country. Well, Krunam was incensed. So that night, she ran into a karaoke bar, saw two little girls and a little boy talking to adult clients. She grabbed them and ran out. It's not the most sophisticated intervention strategy. The next night, she runs into another karaoke bar, grabs two little girls and runs out. Now, when I meet Krunam, she's got 27 kids and no plan. Her only kind of immediate thing is she needed to get out of Chiang Mai, so she went to 4 hours north to the Golden Triangle region where Myanmar meets Laos meets Thailand, and someone gave her a piece of property, and this is where I met her. 27 kids living in a hut, really, that was only palm leaves for a roof, dirt floor, and this was their existence. The way they got their food is that they would go and beg the monks for food after the monks had come back to the temple having begged for their own food that day. So here's where you take one step as a journalist. Okay, I'm going to uncover this. I'm going to investigate this. I'll write a book and I'll have done my part. But how do you walk away from this, particularly when I get home and Krunam tells me that their one standing building has just burnt down? So I made a pledge that I would buy a house or build a house for her and her 27 kids. So as I'm writing this book with a bit of determination, I needed to have good proceeds from it. She calls me and says, "Dave, you know there's 27 kids, and now there's 53. I think this needs to be one damn good book. Okay, 53, 2 homes. Then before I can finish the book, she tells me she has 88 kids. I'm like, slow down on the rescues already. So we build a village, and I'm not that good a writer, so I started an organization called Not For Sale in order to build a village for Krunam. And if you go to the north of Thailand today, you're going to see multiple structures. You're going to see a clinic. You're going to see a school. And these kids now are going on to university, the best high schools in the country. It's inspiring. And so the beginning of Not For Sale was to rescue and protect people from human trafficking. We built shelters in Romania, in Peru, in Thailand, of course. We work in Amsterdam. We work in San Francisco to protect people who have been exploited. So in a sense, what I felt like, even though I was inspired by helping these kids in Thailand or in Romania, I couldn't help but start feeling like I was at the end of a river pulling bodies out as they're drowning and flailing. I needed to go upstream and find out, how do I stop it at its roots? So this shelter in Peru, for instance, we found out that the kids who had been trafficked from the Amazon River region into Lima had a similar pattern to it, how they were taken advantage of, how they were exploited. So we literally decided to go upstream and figure out how we begin to address the problem of trafficking. You see, it's really strange is that I almost felt like when I encountered a social crisis like trafficking, or say refugees today, my brain shuts off and my heart opens up. But as the singer from Ireland, Van Morrison, says, how do I start thinking with my heart and feeling with my head? Why is it that I build successful technology companies with capital and talent when I was a venture capitalist, but when it came to a social problem like human trafficking, I rely on charity and compassion and goodness? How am I going to solve the problems of water and HIV, AIDS, you name the problems we have, when we really don't prioritize with the same capital, talent, and technology that we use in building companies? So I decided that I was going to try and figure out the problem of the Amazon, and this is what I was facing.
The Peruvian Amazon is one of the most ecologically wealthy places on the entire planet, and yet the people are some of the poorest in the world. There's something wrong with that picture.
The communities in the Peruvian Amazon are 7 hours from the nearest city upriver. The only way to get there is by boat, and the community members can't even afford to own a boat.
They don't have access to marketplace. They don't have healthy jobs in their own community. So traffickers come in.
It's happening, and primarily because there's a lack of economic opportunities for work.
When we looked at the Amazon region, we saw rich resources. We saw people who desperately wanted to work and build a new future. We knew there had to be a solution to the problem. The only question is, what would that solution be?
Part of the solution we came up with was relatively simple. It was to provide villagers a boat. But what happens when the boat wears out? How do we create not a charity-based model, but a sustainable model?
How do we create a sustainable model? How do we approach the dilemma of the Amazon and the exploitation of the native people who live there with the same force of passion and resources that we would approach creating a media company, creating a technology handheld device company, whatever your company might be? So I decided, well, I'm going to bring the 50 most influential people I know who are successful in business together, and I'm going to ask them to help me figure this out. I didn't know you then. I'm sure you would have been one of those 50. But I invited those folks that I did know, and this is what happened.
So we were joking around, and we said, what if we locked all of the smartest business leaders that we know in one room and had them solve all of our problems for us? And that's pretty much what we did. We gathered top leaders from business and culture, and we broke them into small groups, and we asked them to compete to come up with the best business model to create jobs in the Amazon.
One of the most extraordinary groups in terms of the range of characters in it included a lawyer, it included the founder of an online healthcare company, it included an agronomist, and a baseball player.
These are large people in large corporations, and they're brilliant minds, and they've got brilliant ideas. I didn't go to college. I signed out of high school. I don't have a business degree in anything. I was out of place, I really was. I didn't feel like I had anything to offer.
The guy from the online health company started to look on Google and found out that there was this unusual plant called cat's claw that came out of the Amazon.
And I was sitting there and I was drinking tea. I remember I was getting into this tea concept, and I just said, hey, can you do an herbal tea? Like, can you make this a tea? And we all just looked at each other, and we were like, man, that's actually an interesting thought.
It's a tea company that sources ingredients in the Amazon and creates jobs That's the idea that eventually became Rebel.
Within an hour, we created this whole business idea around this tea, and then we had to present it, and they made me present it, and I don't know anything about presenting that kind of stuff.
And Rebel won because it was so practical in creating jobs for the people in that region. It linked a consumer up with a producer, someone who wanted to be involved in changing the world with the people who most needed that change.
The next thing I know, I'm getting stuff in the mail, and Dave asking me if I want to invest in the tea. And I actually was like, what tea? At first. And he's like, the tea idea you came up with. And I'm like, you're actually running with that? So now I got bragging rights. It was my idea,
So within 18 months, yeah? From 18 months from the time that the baseball pitcher Jeremy Affeldt comes up with the idea, we go out and hire the best beverage maker in the United States to create a drink for us. How did we attract him? Well, we do what every other company does. We offer him great salary, we offer him stock options, and we give him a platform. We didn't hire a social worker and say, oh, I've always wanted to make a beverage, let me do it for you. Right? So you do it like any other company. Within 18 months, we're in stores. Now we're in every state in the United States. We're in stores throughout the whole spectrum of what food is in America today. We're rebels. Roots, extract, berry, bark, and leaves from the Amazon. Be a rebel. Don't drink the same old crap everybody else drinks. Be different. Right? So this got me thinking about how we even begin to reinvent charity and how do we reinvent business. You see, business integrates and symbolizes and represents what's important to us. So how would I be everywhere? Not just that year-end donation I make to the little children's fund, but how do I be everywhere in the way that I produce and manufacture a drink, the way I source it, the way that I distribute it? And you know what? That is the trend through which people today want to buy. They want to know the story behind the product. So the Amazon was a great nexus for me because not only is it a place where the people are at risk, but the planet is at risk. So how would I begin to use that same methodology, that same model for the environment? Well, again, it starts in a coffee shop. So it seems like all my momentous events happen in coffee shops. I was writing Not For Sale, and I don't know how you write as a journalist, but I need to be in a busy place so I can focus. If I'm at home, I'll distract myself. So I'm writing a book, and this agronomist comes in. His name is Dirk Andrews. He was working at a local plant nursery, and he saw that I was writing every day. He came up to me one day and said, what are you writing about? And I told him my story, that I'm an investor, but I'm fighting human trafficking. So one day he comes and says, I have an idea, and the problem that we face right now in the United States and around the world has to do with the ammonia in the air. You see, farm litter, chicken shit, pig shit, cow shit, is contributing an inordinate amount to the greenhouse effect. But beyond that, the ammonia that escapes the air is part of the particulate matter that enters our lungs. And in the United States alone, it's estimated that $36 billion was spent each year right now on ammonia-related health problems. So you're talking about something that is a planetary problem and a human problem. The other side of this is as the population of the Earth grows, our fertilizer simply doesn't contain enough nitrogen that can go into the soil. So what we do is that we load up our soil with ammonium nitrate that has to sink into and mineralize the soil so that a plant can absorb it. So Dirk said he had a solution. This was his laboratory. I love it. He didn't go to university, self-taught, but he had this little laboratory. For the next 3 years, he learned how to take the ammonia and suck it out of the air from contained buildings that held the manure, and then liquefy it, put it through a sulfur burner, and out would come an ammonium sulfate product. So you're remediating the environment by removing the ammonia, but you're also creating a really valuable product that's called ammoniacal fertilizer. Ammoniacal meaning that a plant can assume it immediately upon contact, rather than having to wait 45 days. It contains 30% nitrogen. The only and best known organic fertilizer contains 1.92% for nitrogen. So 30% nitrogen. So here's a valuable product that now we have to scale. So we, this last year, built our first factory of 150,000 free-range egg-laying chickens who lay a lot of other things behind them. We take that manure through conveyor belts, put it into our long barn, which is the size of a football field, and we take the ammonia out of the air, and we create a very valuable product. Now, what's fascinating about this is that there is an unbelievable interest right now in trying to invest in our company. And as I look at, I can't tell you the numbers because we're negotiating those numbers right now, but if I had tried to create an environmental organization that worked on compliance and worked on, say, grassroots movement of marches and demonstrations, it would take me 20 years to raise the money I'm raising in a very short time to remediate the ammonia in the environment through a technology. The migration of capital, talent, and technology to the things that we care about. I was in Europe not long ago at an event, and it was an investor event, and someone from the largest bank in Switzerland came up to me and said, "So what do you do?" Now, I have to really choose carefully what I tell people, because I get put into a box if I say, "Oh, I run an anti-human trafficking agency," okay? So I typically say I'm a venture capitalist, and I work backwards. So I said, "I'm a venture capitalist." And they go, "Oh, really? What do you invest in?" I said, "Well, I invest in companies that are profitable like any other venture capitalist, but also my companies have to benefit people or the planet." His response was, "Oh my gosh, you should meet our foundation." I went, "Well, hell, I don't want to meet your foundation. I want to meet your investors." But you see the ways that we predispose how we will approach a social or environmental problem. Let's marginalize it into the NGO charity bucket so that we can feel okay about it. But you know and I know we're not going to solve the problems of the world by going through charity. I'll be back in 20 years telling you how bad the world is, because we have not put the resource to it. We have not put the intellectual capital to it. We have not been dedicated to it. So, ideas can invent the world, but we have to be rebels. We have to be rebels. We have to think differently about how our companies are embedded with values that matter. We have to think about the way that we give to the world, that we give our best. When I go to Harvard or Stanford and I speak and somebody goes, "Gosh, you know what? If I can't get a job at Goldman Sachs, I'd love to work for you." So I don't want you. You're a loser. I want those who really want to work for me. You see what I'm saying? I'm always getting the second leftovers. I'm the guy at the bottom of the table getting the scraps. Why? Because I'm fighting environment change? Because I'm fighting for human rights and dignity? I should be at the front of the line, not the back of the line. It's a mentality. But you got to be a rebel. You got to think differently. You got to act differently. And I want to be a part of that movement. Thank you very much for having me today.